Before I call the meeting to order, I'd like just to acknowledge the homeland of the 30 First Nation communities of the area we call the FVRD, where we live, work, and learn. The important decisions that we make at the local government level can affect First Nation communities and Indigenous peoples and organizations in many different ways, both today and into the future. So as part of our collective responsibility, I commit that we continually examine the work we do to ensure that our projects, plans, initiatives, and discussions are guided by the principles of inclusion, collaboration, and reconciliation. With that in mind, I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is our Regional Corporate Services Committee for January 11th. Happy New Year, everyone. Ms. Kinnaman, first item.
Looking for approval of the agenda, and late items.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Facio, seconded by Director Horn. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any. Item carries. Next item.
Item 4.1 is the draft Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting minutes of December 7th, 2023.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Pranger, seconded by Director Ross. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any. The item carries. Next item.
5.1 is the 2024 holiday closure of the FVRD corporate offices.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Dickey and seconded by Director Dixon. Discussion. In the late Director Terry Raymond would have some kind of smart comment here about how many days until Christmas there was, I think probably right now. Hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any. Item carries. Item.
5.2 is the Fraser Valley Regional District General Fees Establishment Bylaw number 1705.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Popover, seconded by Director Pranger. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any. The item carries. Next item.
5.3 is the Chair and Mayor's Committee terms of reference.
Thank you. Director Horn.
Move option 2.
Thank you. Option 2 is moved and seconded, moved by Director Horn, seconded by Director Popov. And Director Horn, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, I just really quickly want to comment and say I think the idea here was a good one. It came out of a conversation with Director Siemens that he and I had after the last election, but it hasn't worked quite as we would expect. I think there is absolutely a reason for municipal mayors and the FVRD as an organization to convene around things such as the recent policing changes. But this particular committee has two challenges. The one is agility, a lack of it. And I think the other is that there have been questions raised by EAs that have at times undermined confidence in it, which has led it to be less effective. I think it's important for municipalities to get together around municipal issues. And I'll certainly wrap up my comments by saying to my colleagues, including Chair Lum, that our phone lines need to remain open, and whenever there's an opportunity to work collaboratively as municipalities and the region, we should do so.
Thank you, Director Horn. Director Pranger.
I think there are opportunities for ad hoc and working committees so that we can be agile and be task oriented and take on those tasks that need to be done. And I think that might be the way that we have to do things and include only those that are necessary to get the job done.
Director Pranger, other comments or questions from anyone? Don't see. Director Dixon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just I appreciate the comments, and I'm thinking, as Director Pranger said, that it is flexible enough that if something came up that was really important and the mayors or whatever group felt they needed to meet, they can do that. So I support this.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other comments, but certainly from my perspective, I would say the same is true for the FVRD, is that we value our working relationship with municipalities and value having all of the mayors sit on this committee, just with the exception of one. But certainly having that perspective is very important. But as a region, I think there's a lot of value, Director Pranger, the approach, where we can just, as needed, pull in folks, where they're either affected and neighboring municipalities and EAs can work together as required on an ad hoc basis. But certainly we'll keep pay close attention to any advocacy issues that the mayors may choose to elevate and support, and we'll certainly support them as we can. So thank you for all your work, Director Horn, chairing that committee. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed, if any? The item carries. Next item.
Next is 6.1.1, which is Invasive Weed Control Program 2023 year-end summary. Information item, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions on weed control? I don't see. Oh, Director Dickey, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just through to staff, reading the staff report, it seems like on all fronts, this is being a very successful program. Is that a fair representation of the situation?
Thank you for the question through the chair. I would say we are making progress, and it's taking a while. Invasive weeds can obviously create some certain challenges. We started tracking sites where we keep revisiting and where there's no plants found. And we've only been doing that in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, fairly recently as far as our program goes. And it's the first time we're getting metrics that do show success. So I would say, yes, we're heading in the right path. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Director Dixon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you probably to Mr. Lilly. Often when I'm at the class meetings or at times in Cultus, they talk about that some of these, actually some of these invasive plants are still being sold, maybe not giant hogweed, but some of them are still being sold at nurseries and things like that. Like, do we have any impact on that, or if that's accurate? I'm thinking kind of in particular the yellow flag iris that comes up quite often.
Through the chair, I would say we work with our local chapter of the Fraser Valley Invasive Species Society, and they in turn work with their provincial counterpart for the Provincial Invasive Species Society, I think they're called too. And they do work with provincial agencies that do have some, say, control and regulation of the sale of these plants. I believe there's been campaigns underway for probably a decade, and it really doesn't feel like they're making a heck of a lot of progress.
Thank you, Director Horn.
Thank you. I'm looking particularly at the segment of the report regarding knotweed, and it identifies a number of different circumstances where access was not possible. One was watercourses private property in the right of way on the rail. I'm wondering whether or not staff have any hope that we might be able to find a product we could use near watercourses, and whether we might have some way of improving our access, particularly on the railway right-of-ways, where it strikes me that the potential for spreading is really, really significant there.
Through the chair, with regards to railways, we are working with our counterparts, the vegetation managers at both CN and CP Rail. And even though they are a challenge to try to reach and to have some kind of commitment to treat, they are willing to hear when we have complaints about specific sites, and they have been treating particular sites where we really advocate and lobby for. So I think there is some progress there. With regards to watercourses and a pesticide that could be approved for knotweed within the pesticide-free zone, that might be a tougher one. There is a process that can be gone through to get approval through the province. That said, these pesticides shouldn't really be applied that close to water. So it does rely a lot more on very physical manual control. And those have just not shown to be very successful with knotweed, unless as a private landowner, you could be on it and you would have to be like repeatedly, pulling stalks for 7 years or so. It does take a long time. It's doable. But there isn't, I don't think, going to be a magic solution with regards to a pesticide that can and should be used near water.
Thank you. Director Smith, go ahead.
Yes, we had an issue with a knotweed there between Ruby Creek and the pipeline there on number 7. It was a railroad and they kept cutting it, and it got to be about tenfold from what it used to be, but I'm sure between the regional district and them, they have got it under control. I'm going to say there's probably 5% now of what it used to be. So, because what happens is it gets the hope then, and then we could end up with part of it too, and that's where it was happening. But I'm going to say that it has been, it is under control now. Thank you for working with them on that.
Thank you. Director Dixon, you still have your light
Sorry.
on? No, just wanted to check in, make sure. Don't see any other comments. So next item.
Next is 6.2.1, which is BC Transit Electronic Fare Collection System.
Thank you. Questions on this item? Director Facio, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through, get the page here, 26. Through you, sir, to our staff, just, this is a system that's been similar to this, has been operating in Europe for many years, works very well. I know there's a lot of education still to come forward on this, but will there be consideration for students and seniors passes on this new transit system? And another thing that works very well in Europe was that the local stores, like corner stores, the newspaper, smaller stores, they had the top-up machines where you could top up your card. So I'm not sure where you would go for the top-ups. And in Europe, the same card can be used for buses and for trains as well. So just depends which way you're traveling. So I know there's a lot of information still to come and education to the municipalities, but if we could just make those few notes, I think it's important that the students and the seniors can just flick their card on the machine when they get on, and also where to top up your card. So that's a very important place. If it's only one location, like say Chilliwack, I mean, you know, besides the stores doing the top up, then it does bring business into the smaller businesses as well. So I'll just take that into consideration. Thank you.
You, Director Facio. Ms. Stewart.
Yes, through the chair. There will be a lot more information coming out. It is sort of, as we speak, things are being developed. There will be 2 ways to actually access the systems. One is through a card, which will be available through our existing vendors or those who wish to continue using that. And people can either purchase at those vendor locations, but they can also top up or add money online if they register the card. The other option is actually an app. So on your smartphone, when you can purchase all sorts of the different products that are available and use that and top up again, adding dollars through your phone. The 2 are separate. So you don't have one pool of cash in your bank. You do have to have separate, but it does give many different ways to actually access the transit services. Cash will still be available. So the public that are used to using cash can still use cash. And in terms of interuse between, say, TransLink and BC Transit at this point in time, there isn't a connection. At some point in the future, that may well happen. But right now, the focus is on BC Transit's different systems across the province. And then we'll work with TransLink in the future to see where there may be connections there. So currently that isn't available, but long-term it may well be. And even further down the line in the next year or 2, you would be able to use your credit card as well. So there's a lot of increasing different options that'll be available for the public to use transit.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Horn.
Yeah, well, as usual, Ms. Stewart has covered things quite comprehensively. I would just simply add a couple of things that I've learned about it. The app itself is downloadable free right now on the App Store, and you can use it to plan your route, tell when buses are coming. There are a number of advantages that will take people to it. As Ms. Stewart said, initially it'll be a QR code that people will be able to use from their phone or the card that's read on the actual bus. And I think perhaps the only thing that Ms. Stewart might not have answered of your questions, Director Facio, is that yes, each price point will be represented. You'll be able to have a pass at each. And then just to emphasize a comment that was made by Ms. Stewart, and one that particularly Abbotsford and Mission will have to pay attention to, especially with the West Coast Express, which is a TransLink operated service, is how do we interface UMO and Compass? And that's a conversation which is being held at the board of BC Transit, but obviously it only affects a very small number of communities across the province, and it'll be a part of a larger conversation, but we may need some help from FERD and mayors around how we might deal with that issue. Not that there's controversy, but as I think Ms. Stewart very well covered, they have a plan to roll out, and that's coming as part of that discussion.
Thank you, Director Horn. I guess the one comment, and maybe I missed this part, but I think it would be an advantage to have just the transfer rights across our region itself. So if we could have seamless kind of integration between FEX and the Central Fraser Valley, Upper Fraser Valley systems, Chilliwack system, with kind of seamless transfers around and seamless fares, I think we're a huge step forward already. So,
and it will. The question becomes, and I think there's right now an assumption of equity. If a person in Chilliwack buys their pass in Chilliwack and then takes a trip into another community versus the opposite. So we may end up needing to look at data and determining whether there's some sort of revenue sharing that goes with that. But I think we should have Mr. Ringma come out and work with Ms. Stewart to give us a more comprehensive presentation as we get closer, but that's certainly part of how it's meant to work.
awesome. Other comments or questions? It'll be right in place when we build that new north side of the Fraser line. All right, next item.
6.3.1 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Outdoor Recreation Management Strategy Update. Again, an information item, and staff are available to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions on this item? I don't see any. Next item.
Moving down to item 8, which is reports by staff. I just wanted to remind the committee that the deadline for LMLGA resolutions is coming February 28th. So if there are items of regional significance that you are hoping to have move forward for a resolution, just noting that date, because we would need to get that into the work plan for February and bring it forward to February board for consideration. You did have one in 2023 with respect to radon, and staff are working on that one. But if there's anything else that has at least regional significance or perhaps provincial significance, maybe just send me an email and we can consider bringing that forward to a future meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. There's also opportunity, I think, for the board to endorse other resolutions that would come from other municipalities and stuff as well. So because same process. So if you were wanting our name added to the endorsement list because you feel like it might strengthen a municipal resolution, it'd probably be the same deal. Get it to us so we can deliberate at the board about it. Okay. Next item.
Next is reports by board directors.
Thank you, board directors. Director Pranger, go ahead.
Speaking of resolutions, I think that it's time we refresh a resolution that has been, I believe, passed by UBCM in regard to diking and riverbank protection, and the province taking the responsibility that it should do for that service. Individual municipalities, I'm sure not just small ones, but the larger ones also have a huge issue with affordability and the consistency of getting work done where it's necessary. So I would like to see us focus on that a little bit more. And I don't know what the best way is, but I see Delta is also bringing it forward as an issue for them. So maybe this is an apropos time for us to focus on that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
if thank you, Director Pranger. If I remember correctly, I think the Metro Vancouver task force that they had brought it to the UBCM the year before last or last year. So I think it's good. We could follow up and find out what a lot of this, from what I understand, is hinging on what the BC flood strategy, what comes out of the BC flood strategy, and from what I understand, that work is still underway. There was some folks that were initially working on the flood strategy, as I understand it, from the forestry and whatever else it's called ministry, and I believe that's now shifted to the water ministry. And I don't know that I don't think the same person that was working on it shifted along with the strategy. So yeah, I think it's not quite sure exactly what's happening with it, but we can certainly follow up and advocate strongly for that. And there's also the ongoing work of the Lower Fraser Flood Coalition, which includes a lot of First Nation folks in the Emergency Planning Secretariat, and the FERD is plugged in and engaged with some of that work that's going on. And they have their own strategy for the Coast Salic communities, the Helix Kata strategy that's going. I'm not sure if that has come to fruition quite yet either. So a lot of moving parts for sure around flooding. Anybody who read the Fraser Valley Current this morning saw a story on flooding as well. Some of the new research that's come out around frequency of atmospheric river events and looking at preparing for not just spring freshet, but the need to ensure that any kind of flood infrastructure that we have is also adequate for those winter floods that are traditionally, where we traditionally would see lower stream flow in the Fraser. So lots of moving parts. That's a very long-winded answer to say, yes, I think you're right. Let's not lose the momentum on this topic. Director Pranger.
It is a topic, though, that affects all of our municipalities and our region, and I think we shouldn't lose sight of it. And this year, there's a lower snowpack. Maybe we can get some work done in this year, and when we're not facing a spring freshet, which could be disastrous to us.
Yes, thank you, Director. Director Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. A bit of good news. The Red Cross is providing a support program for the uninsured households who were impacted by the 2023 wildfires. So this program provides a one-time lump sum, with the amount being dependent on a few criteria to ensure equitability and need. So I have referred the families from my area, and the Red Cross has started contacting them. Some have already been accepted, so I'm hoping for a happier new year for them. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for your work on that. Other reports from board directors? Don't see any. Okay, Ms. Kinnaman, same.
Next item is item 10, which is public question period for items relevant to the agenda. We do not have any members of the public joining us here in the boardroom today, but perhaps we can turn things over to our corporate officer, Jamie Van Ness.
Ms. Van Ness.
Thank you. We do have two members of the public now joining us by Zoom. So this would be your opportunity to ask a question relevant to the agenda. Just hit the raise hand function to indicate you have a question. Just give our two viewers a moment here. And it would appear there's no questions, and we can move to the next item.
We do, however, appreciate you tuning in and watching our committee meeting, though. Thank you. Next item, Ms. Kinnaman.
Looking for a resolution to close the meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's moved by Director Facio, seconded by Director Popo. All in favor, opposed, if any, item carries. Take 2 minutes to set up.